Shalom, holy brothers and sisters. This week's Parsha is Parshat Bamidmar. It's the first chapter in the fourth book of the 5 books of Moses. The 5 books of Moses comprise the Torah, also known as the Old Testament, or what we just call the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. And so where we are now is in the 38th year of the 40 years that the Israelites spent wandering in the desert. And they're wandering around because they have committed the sin of worshiping the golden calf. And so this entire generation must be wiped out before they can enter the promised land, before they can enter Israel. So it deals with chapter 1 verse 1 through chapter 4 verse 20, 420. And there's a lot of things that go on in this book. So first of all, the name Bamidbar means in the desert, but it's translated into numbers because it deals with the census of the counting of the people. So the men were counted, and there were over 600,000 men, but when you count the women and children, it's estimated that there were over 1 million people in the desert wandering around from encampment to encampment. And you could think of it as, why were only the men counted? This seems sexist. And it was counted only the men who were of like army age, so it was approximately, I believe, 20 to 60 years old. And I came up with another explanation of why only the men, the heads of the household, were counted and not the women and children. And that is because in the Bible, in Scripture, it refers to when a man and a woman are united in holy matrimony. It's a sacred connection in which the two actually become one flesh. So when a couple is married, it's considered as if it's one unit. So if the man represents the head of the household, the unit, then that is what is counted. But that's my own interpretation. I'm going to share with you some other things that I learned from different commentaries. One is Zelig Pliskin's book Growth Through Torah, and the other one is from the Zohar, which is the primary text of Kabbalah. So the camps were made, every tribe encamped in its own little group, and then those tribes were also collected in triads or trifectas. So you had 3 tribes together and another 3 tribes, 3 tribes, and 3 tribes. So you had the 12 tribes in groups of 3, and each of those groups of 3 had their own degel, their own flag or banner, which represented them. And based on where they were encamped, it influenced their spirituality and their conduct. So for example, those who were closest to Moses, who was the biggest prophet of all time, they of course benefited from the spiritual connection to him. So it teaches us the lesson of birds of a feather flock together. So if you want to be a certain way, you need to hang around people that are that way, because your environment will influence you for better or for worse. And likewise, the tribes that were encamped next to Korach, who rebelled against Moses, they also were influenced and were more easily swept into the rebellion as well. Furthermore, each of these 4 tribe groups had an angel assigned to it, which governed over their tribes. So in the east we had Judah, and the angel Uriel was subsiding over them, watching over them. In the south there was the tribe of Reuven, and Michael was the angel assigned to them, Michael in English. In the north there was Dan in English, and Gabriel was the angel assigned to them. And in the west we had the tribe of Ephraim, and Raphael, the angel of healing, was assigned to them. And in the west is also the Shekhinah. Something interesting that I learned in the Zohar of this week's Parsha is a little segula if you're wanting to have a male son. It's like the origin of Feng Shui here. So we know that the location and direction and placement of different objects in the house, in the office, in the sanctuary has certain energy, certain powers. So if you want to have a boy, you should place the head of your bed in the north and your feet in the south. So the head should be in the north, the feet should be in the south, and this is more serendipitous towards having a male son. And it goes into the reasons why, comes from scriptures in the Kabbalah on this week's portion. And it also talks about how the 4 encampments represent the 4-letter name of God, the one that we don't pronounce, the tetragrammaton, the Yud and the He and the Vav and the He. So each of the north, east, west, and south represents a different letter in the name of God. And north being Dan and south being Reuven, so it's the unification of the male and the female that is part of how it's explained about like the segula or the merit of having a male son. So in addition to the encampments corresponding with different angels, corresponding with the different the name of God, the different letters in the name of God, it also, there's a correspondence to the artifacts in the tabernacle, such as the altar, the basin, the menorah, different things in the tabernacle, which was the traveling sanctuary that went with them from place to place in the desert, also correspond with those different things that I mentioned. So another interesting thing that I learned from the Zohar was about the establishment and perfection of the world. This came through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in Hebrew. So Abraham represents the lifting the world with his right arm, Yitzchak, his son, the left, Yaakov, and the central column. So, and then Yaakov had the 12 tribes, which were the root of the world, and their 70 offspring. So this is how the world was established and perfected, and it led to a completion, also known as Ziv, the countenance of God. And we also learned that from Zion, which is another name, Zion for Israel, is the source, the wellspring where all blessing comes from. So this, along with the giving of the Torah or the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, which the first 2 were given to all of the people directly, they were able to see and hear the words being spoken, and it actually, the people couldn't handle it, so they asked Moses to be the intermediary, so the rest were given down by Moses, but it was a direct transmission to all of the people. And then there was the building of the tabernacle, and the tabernacle represents Mount Sinai being taken kind of like with them in their midst from place to place wherever they went, which nowadays we have a synagogue or a shul or a temple, different names that we call a house of worship, that also that also represents our connection with God, a dwelling place, a house of meeting where we can go and hear and be heard as well. So in this chapter, other things that happen, so it was chapter 3, verse 38 that had to do with teaching about the importance, as I mentioned before, about the environment, where you surround yourself, because it will influence your nature and how you develop. So that's very important. It's also mentioned in this chapter about how the Levites, the tribe of Levi, their special mission was to assist the priests, known as Kohanim. A Kohen is a priest in Hebrew. And they were counted differently, but I'm not going to go into that. So it's the Bamidbar, wandering around in the desert. There was a lot of complaining going on because this was a time where, you know how they say, you can take the Jew out of slavery, but you can't take the slavery out of the Jew. It's like, you've probably heard this saying, you can take a person out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out of a person, something like that. So in other words, it's a mentality that a person has to overcome or get rid of in order to be ready for the next phase, in order to be able to be even receptive to receiving blessing. you have to like have a different mindset, and they were still in the slave mindset, so they could not receive the blessing of having the land of Israel. Yeah, so there's one more thing that I want to read, and it comes from Rabbi Zelig Pliskin's book, and he has a lot of interesting little tidbits about the different scriptures in the Bible portion, and the one that I want to share with you comes from Bamidbar chapter 2 verse 34. ויעשו בני ישראל ככל אשר ציווה השם את משה כן חנו לרגליהם וכן נשאו איש למשפחתיו על בית אביתיו. And the children of Israel did all that the Almighty commanded Moses. That is the way they encamped, according to their flags, and that is the way they traveled, each person to his family together with the house of his father. Oh, that's another thing that I should mention, is that let's say a man from the tribe of Dan married a woman from the tribe of Menashe. So where would they live? So they would live under the man's tribe, which in this case was Dan. But so the tribe goes by the father, the man of the family. However, the religion follows the mother. So if the mother is Jewish and the father is Gentile, the child is Jewish. But if the mother is Gentile and the father is Jewish, then the child is Gentile. So the religion is passed through the mother, but the tribe, or like the different types of, like nowadays we have Sephardic, Ashkenaz, the different traditions get passed down from the man's line. Okay, so anyway, back to this. The lesson here is not to become involved in seeking better arrangements. So in the encampments, everyone was happy with where they were. There were not any fights over the tribes wanting to be, in a different position, closer to Aaron and Moses or something like that. They all accepted the will of the Almighty and did not complain or argue. However, in other cases, like let's say at a wedding, you could have family members that think that wherever the bride and groom seated them, it doesn't give them enough honor. Or you can have people in synagogue that also, if they don't get a nice seat in the front, they think that it's below their dignity, or maybe they donate more money, so they deserve to be in a higher position. So this portion is warning us not to be honor-seeking, not to let your ego kind of direct you in these matters. There are certain situations when, complaining about your seating may be appropriate. Like if somebody's in a wheelchair, they might need to be in the aisle, or if somebody's pregnant, they might need to be next to the bathroom, or whatever the case may be. In those situations, it's warranted. But when it's not warranted, it should not be done. Okay, so it says in Ta'anit 21b, it is not the place that honors the person, but the person who honors the place. If a person is honorable because of his own wisdom and behavior, then regardless of where he sits, he remains honorable. If, however, a person lacks his own virtues, the place where he sits will not miraculously make him into a more honorable person. A person who places a great emphasis on external symbols demonstrates a lack of appreciation for his own value. Focus on spiritual growth and not on superficial signs of status. So I will leave you with those wonderful words of wisdom, and I hope you have a blessed and wonderful and relaxing Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, all the best. Bye.
כשהיו שומעים את השם הנכבד